present this content to you. Please do use the Q&A functionality that you have. Even during the presentation, we'll be more than happy to reply to all your answers during the session. So without further ado, Alok, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Thanks, JP. So again, thanks for joining this. And I'm told that this is a live event, so even if people join in late, they can kind of go back and start looking at everything that they might have missed. So there's no need to wait, and we could get started right away. So again, I think the goal for this session really is to understand a little bit in terms of how the platform has actually evolved in the last 2 to 3 years, and how has that impacted the way we customize and the way we build on top of the Dynamics or CDS platform. So that's essentially the topic for today. So we'll be talking about a little bit, looking back in terms of how we used to do things before, how it's changed now, and what are the more modern techniques to achieve or to achieve the business outcomes in much more efficient and faster way with probably lesser code. So that's going to be the focus, and some of the things that we talk about, the technology choices, etc., will also have the licensing implications. But again, for this discussion, we'll focus more on what's new and how you can think about using that rather than going too much into what's going to be the exact cost implication or the licensing aspect of it, because we see that in itself can be a topic that can take an hour. So just to be clear in terms of what our focus for today is going to be. Okay, so with that, talk a little bit about the evolution that has happened, and I think anybody who has been associated with Dynamics for the last 2 or 3 years kind of has already heard a lot of buzzwords going around, Powerapps and Canvas, model-driven apps, and so I just wanted to kind of summarize a little bit on the platform changes and also talk about why it was important and why we have done this. So the state where we are today, it's actually no more CRM. CRM was more of a an isolated platform that was created, or XRM, where you could put in your business logic. It had its own relational data store, which was perfect in a world where you had to build forms over data, get users to enter information, and we store all of that stuff, and you build your processes on top of it. But the way we see things have moved today, it's essentially it's no more sitting in one closed cocoon, but we have opened up the platform where all of a sudden everything can easily start talking to each other, whether it's through flow connectors. You're not kind of limited to the XRing capabilities of designing forms and just putting the fields the way the tool allowed you to. So truly, the way the platform has changed today, the spectrum of opportunities have also expanded drastically. So you can actually go and start your business or digital transformation journey from wherever you are, and all the innovation and all the work that you're doing need not be limited to one CRM application, or you always don't have to go throw away your old system and start building from new. So that's really some of the fundamental changes in the way we think about the product and the platform going forward. And the changes that we have made are essentially good, because if you look at historically, the lifespan of an organization or a company has reduced in the last 100 years, and in fact, the average lifespan of some of the companies today is shorter than the lifespan of the systems a few years back. So businesses are changing very frequently. They're getting disrupted, very, very fast. So, which means the IT systems and the technology that they use also needs to change at the same pace, which is the reason why SaaS is becoming more and more relevant. And once you're on the SaaS, things are going to change fast, and we have to get used to this fast-paced world and forward moving businesses. So that's essentially why this change was necessary and why we should embrace this, and also try to understand the impact it's going to have on the way we customize and build on top of CRM, CDS, Power Platform. But try to clarify all of this as we go through this presentation. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to take a quick look at how this happened actually. So back in 2016, we had this we had the concept of Powerapps, and there was a team that was working on creating a high productivity platform where citizen developers or non-developers, non-coders could actually come in and easily be able to build applications with a really custom UX, exactly build applications the way they want, with the exact look and feel, and it was mainly targeted as users who are very close to the business and they want to solve their own problems. So rather than going and starting off with a big IT project that would take 18 months or 24 months for it to get delivered, and before the business sees any value. So that was the kind of mindset which the Powerapps or this high productive platform was started. But we also had CRM, or the underlying platform, which was XRM, and this has been there for quite some time. It was mature in terms of the having a proper relational data store, structure of entities, automation capabilities within the platform. You can write workflows, plugins, etc. So we had all of these capabilities already on the XRM, but what we were essentially missing here was the level of control that you have on how the user interface can be customized for very specific scenarios or for very specific industries. I think there were some limitations there. A lot of the customization actually required code. It was not always targeted at the citizen developers or the people who just want to go and configure the application, start using without having to have any coding knowledge. So more or less, quite frequently, you'd see that you would end up writing code, whether it's on the client side or on the server side. So that was the old or the XRM model, where what you were creating were essentially the model-driven apps, which we refer to as, and the Powerapps motion was essentially the output was the canvas-driven apps. So it didn't make sense for us to have these two platforms where the gaps on each side were actually resolved by the other. So it made absolute sense for us to merge the two into the Powerapps platform, which is exactly what we did in March 2018. So the XRM, as we knew, doesn't exist because that's merged into the Powerapps platform, and the canvas-driven capabilities that Powerapps had are now merged into the XRM to create the Power Platform. So now both these things can take advantage. So Powerapps have a native data store where they can interact with CDS, create, start storing relational data there, take advantage of the capabilities like plugins, business rules, etc. that XRM used to offer, and the model-driven apps, or the XRM side of the house, now can take advantage of Canvas apps. So you can embed custom UI within your model-driven apps and provide that user experience that many of your users and customers have been longing for. So taking care of the limitations essentially on both the sides. That's been a big move for us, and really the underlying change that is driving all of the other things that we're going to be talking about in this presentation. So moving ahead in terms of the current state, and I hope that most of you are already aware of this, but with the version 9, we moved all of our customers who were using the legacy CRM or Dynamics 365 onto the Azure platform. So today, the entire platform is actually running on Azure, and on top of the Azure platform, which provides essentially low-level services like Azure SQL or Logic Apps, etc., we have built the Power Platform, which is the CDS, Flow, Powerapps, and all the connectors that come with it, and also some of the more recent things like AI Builder. So the entire Power Platform is essentially sitting on top of Azure. And then on top of this Power Platform, we have the apps, whether it's the sales app that we're talking about, the service app, or the marketing app. So in terms, if you have to look at the layering here, it's Azure, then the Power Platform, and then on top of that, we have Dynamics 365 apps, but also things like Office, etc., because they allow really strong native integration with the Power Platform. So if you have a SharePoint list, you can actually create a corresponding visualization within the Power Platform and embed that within SharePoint, right? And similarly, things like Flow can easily communicate to your Exchange and all other Office apps. So we really see that Power Platform has become more fundamental to both Office Dynamics and even provides capabilities to build web applications using the Power Portals and also enable mobile workloads using using the Powerapps player, etc. So that's essentially the state of the platform today, after all the move and the merger that we just spoke about. Again, I just quickly want to touch upon this, but I do expect that everyone is aware of this. But in terms of the way we do the releases, essentially when we were in the CRM 4.0 2011, or even after that, we were essentially running an on-prem software hosted on bare metal servers and updating that in a very on-premises kind of way, where we would release a huge patch or an update twice a year that we would expect you to install, and which meant that you had a bit more control in terms of you could do things that are unsupported and still live with that for up to a year, because you could skip these updates sometimes. But essentially, it was not operating in a true SaaS model where we are keeping the service on a single version where all our customers are getting the same benefits as any other SaaS service. So essentially, with the Dynamics 365 version 9. We moved to one version, and in fact, our entire customer base worldwide today runs on a single version. And we have got into the continuous deployment model where we do releases every week now. So there is no big upgrade that you need to go through. There is continuous deployment of updates. What we essentially do twice a year in April and October now is just the feature enablement. So there is no massive code deployment or a major change happening. It's just you're turning on the switches to light up the features that you need to use. So that's the new model, and truly a much more mature way of doing this on a SaaS platform. Going forward, I think we need to now with the evolution of the platform, we also need to kind of evolve the way we think about building on top of the platform, right? And again, these are some of the 4 or 5 points that we wanted to highlight, and it should be on top of mind whenever you're designing your solutions or you're customizing the CDS or the Powerapps platform. So use of supported approaches. This is not a best practice or a good thing to do, but essentially this is actually now mandatory. You are you should be mandated to only use supported approaches, because if you're using any unsupported techniques on the platform today, essentially you are at a risk, because with any weekly deployment, some of those things might break and your unsupported code might stop working. So it's not an option anymore. It's a mandate essentially. So use only the supported techniques. Success by design, and I think this is also the terminology that we internally use to kind of define how we want to engage with customers as fast track. But success by design is basically a thinking where you're designing the system such that it's strongly aligned to what the platform is offering, and you also understand that the users for whom you're building the system are at the center of your design, right? So if you find yourself or if you see a set of requirements where you're supposed to build an entity form with 20 subgrids on it, I think you need to go and question that, what is the impact on the usability of what you're trying to build? What is the impact that it's going to have on the performance overall? And how will this solution be adopted by the end users, right? So kind of thinking about these things and kind of challenging that scenario, even if it comes as a requirement, is the kind of mindset that we want you to get into, really, because the platform allows you to do whatever you want essentially, and build code and customizations the way you want. But if the end of the day, if the usability and the performance is not great, then nobody's going to adopt that and nobody wins. So thinking about these aspects from the day one is really important, and these are some of the principles that you should follow into your design, and challenge the business and the folks whenever you get these requirements or when you get into these discussions, right? So if I have to repeat that, it's think from a user perspective, keep usability, performance, and how the solution is going to scale, not just after you have built it, but 1 or 2 years down the line is also really important to think. Moving ahead, I think implementation of best practices, and again, a lot of these are documented in different forms, in our docs, and there have been learnings and a lot of sessions in the events that you go where you'll hear about best practices. And one of the things that we are trying to do is, as much as possible, build these things into the platform so that we don't allow you to do things that are against the best practices, or wherever we see anti-patterns, we want to avoid that and kind of empower you in such a way that you can automatically build things in the right way. And I think one of the examples for that is solution checker, right? So today, if you have a solution, you could simply go and run the solution checker to identify if there are things that are possibly unsupported, if there are patterns that you're seeing within your code that might cause performance issues or scalability issues in the future. So that's, I would say, a starting step, but we are going to go down more on that path to see how the platform can in some ways protect itself from things like this and protect the user experience of the users who use our platform. So this is, you're going to see more and more investments on this side to see how we can make sure that you're following the best practices. So obviously there's an education element and learning element there, but also from a platform perspective, how we can have gates and checks there to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Moving forward, I think two other patterns that I see which is really good is a lot of customers now have started thinking about the automated testing. Again, I was talking about the pace of change, how quickly things have started moving forward, whether it's the platform or the business. So trying to automate your tests as much as possible can actually help you adopt these changes much more quickly. And we do have some tools like Easy Repro that you could leverage for doing this. So if you have not thought about automation testing for your platform, I think it's a good time where you should start seeing how you can leverage automated testing to move forward quickly. And the same thing applies in some ways to the build automation. So instead of doing manual builds, importing solutions, we are making investments in this direction to help our customers automate their build process. And I think there have been some recent preview tools that we have out there, some pre-built build tasks, etc., that you could use in your Azure DevOps pipeline. But yeah, that's another area where we want you to start thinking, and I think we'll touch upon these things a little bit more in the second part of the presentation that Andres will do. Yeah, I think this is again, in terms of the protect and safeguard, I think this is really an important point for us, because there has been kind of, I would say sometimes it's kind of misunderstood in some ways that why do we have throttle limits now all of a sudden? What are we trying to stop the customers from doing things that they've been doing all this while? But just to be clear on that in terms of what our intent here is. To start off with, I think the first thing we need to understand, which I think most of you already know, is the platform that we're talking about, the CDS and the Power Platform, is actually a shared platform. So this is a shared platform which is shared by your users and by other customers as well. So having and the platform obviously has its own capacity and limits. You're running on a shared infrastructure. And one of the things that we have seen a lot of times is in the previous let's say licensing model, or the way we were selling the platform, was a lot of these things were tied to the user licenses. So if you have X number of user licenses, you can have Y amount of storage. But we always had those exceptions where everything is not exactly tied to the number of users that you have on the platform. You might have just a system with 15 users, but you might have a very high storage requirement. And in some ways, the platform was not allowing for that flexibility, whether it's handling some of those high processing workloads. You might be creating too many asynchronous jobs, which we can't process within that kind of time, right? So the essentially the requirement here was, can we provide our customers more flexibility and give them a more clear understanding of what they can do on the platform, how far can they push it, and if that's not sufficient, then where do they go from there, right? So that's those are some of the questions that were raised. And keeping that in mind, we started publishing things like throttle limits to talk about specifically what you can do, how many operations or how many requests, API requests can a user make, and whether it's in a window of 24 hours, or how many concurrent requests can they make. So there are different elements of these throttle limits. So number of concurrent requests, how many requests you can make in a window, in a sliding window of 5 minutes, or the number of requests that you can make in a window of 24 hours. And these things essentially are done with one single intent, is to make sure that the users who are using the platform don't get a degraded experience just because there is one part of the application or one specific job that might be consuming all of the resources, and users start seeing slowness because of that, right? We need to understand that the Dynamics or the CDS Powerapps platform is an OLTP platform which is optimized for real-time transactions, for the users to interact with it and really get quick responses. It is not something that's designed to do a lot of heavy computations or complex calculations in the real time. And I think that's where some of these throttle limits will actually help reinforce that behavior, that we are building things in a way that is suitable for the users and the way it should be on an OLTP platform, but also kind of helps us look at our design to see why are we doing things in the way we have been doing in the past, because we've seen a lot of examples of the code being designed in a way where it was not optimized. So just to give you an example, if there is an integration that's happening, instead of looking at delta, we have had examples where we are trying to bring in the whole data every day and do a lot of those updates. So can we optimize the overall design to make sure that the system is actually working in the best possible way for our end users without having excessive load or compute usage on the platform? So that's some of the more fundamental reasons why we are introducing throttles. And it's very important that you're aware of these things when you're designing your solutions, especially things around integrations, and even build the logic within your integrations to handle transient failures, to actually uniformly distribute the requests many a times. So if you see that at the same point there are too many requests, parallel requests that are coming and hitting the platform, you might get a response saying that can you retry after so many seconds. So it's really important that we understand the patterns that that we could leverage to handle these kind of transient failures or errors that you get as a part of your integrations. So that's in terms of the impact that these throttling can have on the way you design your solution. So with that, yeah, moving forward, and I just quickly wanted to touch upon this, and I think I kind of mentioned that CDS is not a compute platform. So if you find yourself writing plugins that are very close to the 2-minute timeout limit or are exceeding, then there's probably something that's not right, because if I've seen some examples where there are complex string transformations happening in retrieve multiple plugins, and it's just that the platform is not designed to do these complex computations or transformations in the real time, and that's not the right kind of workload for this platform. Hence, it's really important that we understand what we are doing and if CDS is the right platform or not. And today, because we are sitting on Azure, it's much more easier for us to go and move some of this or offload some of this work to things like maybe Azure Functions or move it elsewhere within the lower levels of the platform. So that's essentially something that we should keep in mind. And this is what we are doing internally. So when we are building satellite applications, just to give an example of Dynamics 365 marketing, the marketing engine that's actually doing all the delivery of the emails, sending it to, you might have 1 million contacts and we need to send those bulk emails, capture the clicks that are happening on a website and bring that info back. These things are actually not, or all these calculations and computations or the logic, even for that matter, or related to segmentation, is not happening within CDS. It's actually an Azure service that's sitting which runs all of this marketing logic inside it, but seamlessly integrates with CDS. So from an end user perspective, it's still the dynamic service, and but under the covers we have some additional Azure services that are supporting that functionality. And I think this is the same thinking that you can bring when you're designing complex solutions to see how you can leverage Azure to take take advantage of the underlying platform. So in terms of just a quick recap of what we have today. So whenever we see that there's a requirement to go build something or customize the platform, what are the top things that come to our mind? Okay, let me go write a plugin, quickly put some code in there, or build a workflow. And we have seen some adoption of the business rules as well. Or if it is a bit too complex, I'm just gonna go write a lot of client JavaScript and put it on the form load events or different form events. And the scenarios where I need a customized visualization, I'm going to just build an HTML web resource and try and embed that on the form. So these are the most common things, or the things essentially that were more relevant on the XRM side of the house, and something that we are used to when doing customizations. So moving forward, I think what are the challenges? Even though that has that's been a powerful approach which has worked well for over 10 years, but we need to say what are the challenges. I think to start off with, I think a lot of these capabilities are tied to the XRM platform. What we do within CRM, they're very dynamic specific skills, right? The way you write your plugin, the object model for the client side scripting, it kind of lives in its own dynamics cocoon, and it's not so easy to kind of use this exactly same technology to have or to work on processes that span across multiple systems or go outside of Dynamics. So that's one key thing. So these are very much focused to the XRM platform. It was kind of very easy to jump into the code and just go do what you want, rather than thinking how I can use more of a configuration approach rather than a coding approach. So code kind of still took in some ways precedence over configuration, because it is just much easier to go write a few lines of JavaScript and achieve what you want, rather than trying to configure the platform in different ways. And there wasn't enough flexibility there. And many a times you would actually start with the configuration approach and then realize that that's not working. So you're going to have to throw that away and rebuild everything in a different technology. And some of the examples that I've seen, there are customers who ended up building complete Angular applications and put them within the web resources. So users actually never see the out-of-the-box UI, but just use this Angular application. So you use a platform which allows you to easily build these forms and navigations, and then you throw that away and build something completely custom, right? Because there is no easy way to progress from the work that you've already done, and you kind of hit a glass ceiling to say that no, this is not going to work, and I need to rebuild everything again. So that was one of the bigger challenges, I would say. And even from a scalability and performance standpoint, this was designed as an on-prem system, right? Which was essentially, users might be sitting really close to the data center in low latency environments. So it was okay to have heavy forms, a lot of code that would actually run behind. But it's just that as these things started moving to cloud, it didn't scale very well. And the code first approach, again, not saying that code is bad, but the ability for us to always optimize and go make that code efficient was also limited from a platform perspective. So which means the scalability and performance challenges were much higher in some of these older approaches. So in terms of the future platforms, so now we know that the XRM and the Power Platform merged, and the offering that we have now essentially is you're not limited to Dynamics or the XRM relational model and forms over data kind of a system that we had before. But now, like I mentioned previously, the platform has really opened up. So whether it is Office or any of the third-party systems that you might have, it's much easier to build processes and code that kind of spawns across all of these different line of business applications. And you could also leverage the common skill sets. So if you know how to build a flow, you could not use that skill only within Dynamics, but also use that to when you're working with Office or any of the other Microsoft technologies. So I think and this entire ecosystem of connectors that we have, ready-made connectors, means you don't have to go identify what the API is, how you're going to work with that API, try to understand, but just use the pre-built connectors to quickly start interacting with these different applications within your organization. So I think that's one of the big things, that now things work across cloud services and across the applications that you have. And for the example of the the configuration first and then no-cliff transition. So the Power Platform, you could start with configuration, and in fact configuration goes much further than what it used to before. And if that's still not enough, you could go and still go down the route of custom code and build what you want. So just to give you an example, back to the UI scenario where you've designed your model-driven app, you've designed the forms, etc. But then you see that there's a specific experience that the user wants. You could go build a PCF, a Powerapps control, where you could embed that either in a model-driven app or a Canvas app. So there is more flexibility, and it's not always throw away the work that you have done, but you can build upon what you already have. Again, inherently, you don't have to think about multiple devices. How is this going to look on a mobile phone? How is this going to look on a tablet? So the platform itself is taking care of all the responsive UI, which is really an expectation, and it's fair that it was much harder in the past, but now you don't have to worry. You just build it once and it works seamlessly across all of these devices. So that's, I think, the biggest advantage of moving to the Power Platform. And just going back to those technologies again that we used to leverage in the XRM world. So the way we want you to think about it, we're not saying that these old technologies or the old ways of customization are dead now and you shouldn't be using them. But before you start using them, stop and think if there's a better or an easier way to achieve the same thing today, because the platform can offer you much more than what it used to before, right? So if you have a scenario where you're thinking of going and building a plugin, see if a business rule would do. You could have a business rule at the entity level, or you could build a flow for achieving that. Or if you think that this is a very complex computation that's going on here, can I actually offload some of this into an Azure function rather than putting all of the calculations and transformations within a plugin? So not that plugins are going away, but this is just something that you should be aware of. How do I use the configuration of the no-code approach and take it further than what I have done in the past? Similarly, with the workflows, I think workflows essentially, help you design the processes that were limited to Dynamics and didn't go beyond that. And I think Flow really offers a lot more power in terms of the pre-built 200 plus connectors that you have. Along with that, it can do almost everything that the Flow does. It's just that it runs asynchronously and in almost near real time rather than synchronously, but it can still go perform all of those operations that Flow was doing and do much more using the connectors, and even talk to applications that are non-Dynamics based, or even talk to applications that are running on-prem using the application gateway and the connectors that we have. So it's really much powerful, and something that we would recommend you to start taking a look at, rather whenever there's a scenario where you need to develop a workflow, think about using a flow. Business rules, again, they've been there, and I think this is one of the areas where we want to invest more and make them more powerful. So business rules will continue to exist, and you can leverage them wherever possible, rather than having to go develop your own custom JavaScript, right? So again, not saying that JavaScript is going away, but it's just that we made changes to the object model of JavaScript, and maintaining some of these things over a period of time can be more challenging for the customers. So leverage things like business rules, where even a non-developer could come and maintain and modify these things as required going forward. Even on the web resources, where you have a scenario where you need a customized UI and the model-driven capabilities are not enough. You have Canvas-driven apps and PCF, which you could build these controls and even embed the canvas-driven app within a model-driven app. And I think this provides you the flexibility. In fact, you have pixel level control over how you want to build the user experience within a canvas app. And I think embedding this, which also takes care of all the authentication and the connections that you need to the underlying CDS layer automatically, is extremely convenient. And one of the approaches that we would highly recommend when you have scenarios where you would have built an HTML web resource, look at canvas-driven apps and Powerapps control framework. So that's just wanted to talk a little bit about the new approaches. And what we're going to do now is I'll pass it on to Andres here, who is going to double click a little bit more into the Power Platform and go slightly deeper into some of the things that we have been talking about. So over to you, Andres.
Thanks, Alok. So yeah, as Alok was saying, we're going to be pretty much doing a bit of a deep dive into all the concepts that he's been talking around the Power Platform. What we truly believe is our one of our rich low-code platforms that we have that, as Alok was saying, works across all our cloud products. It spans across for first-party apps that we have, Dynamics 365, standalone applications, or it could be as well your applications, right? So we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into all of these concepts that are built around the customization paradigm. So as Alok was saying, we have these two concepts of model-driven and canvas-driven apps. So to be talking about model-driven apps, this is what you normally will be building when you're creating your, what we used to call your XRM applications. This is what Dynamics is actually built on top of today. And basically what you have with model-driven apps is a component-focused approach where basically you don't really need to write all the code in order to create your user interface or your logic. All of that is pretty much done for you in a component-focused way. And actually, you could pretty easily build applications that don't necessarily require high complexity, but you can obviously extend it and further beyond and create that higher level of complexity in your applications if you wanted to. Most of the layout, which is like the images that you're seeing on the left, which is basically showing you what are the latest changes that we have introduced in our latest release wave 2 that you can already be previewing. Most of the layout is determined for you. You pretty much have to decide which entities, forms, views you want to include in your application. You obviously have a level of customization and design of that layout, but pretty much all the layout is determined for you based on the design that you're creating through our rich designer maker capabilities that we have available. All of these applications are fully responsive. Inherently, it works across all the devices, as we were saying before, desktops, tablets, mobiles. All of these applications perfectly adapt to all the variety of devices that we have nowadays. And again, without having to build all of these design responsive applications, the layout is determined for you and it's adapted across all of these devices. As I was saying, we have these designer maker capabilities. With the Power Platform, we've actually introduced things such as our new form designer that you can use in order to design the layout of these applications. We no longer are in the days where you have to design your form in a CRM 2011 look and feel, and then try to guess or preview how it would look in your CRM 2013, 15 forms. Right nowadays, you will pretty much be designing, and you will be saying what you design, and you will know what to expect, what is going to come from that, basically. So I would strongly encourage you guys, if you're not using that today and you're still using the old legacy design capabilities, to give them a try, because they're pretty powerful. These applications, as part of your ALM strategy that you might have in place, these applications are treated as like components that you can put as part of your solutions. So you can move these solutions across your different environments, your different instances, thanks to the fact that they're components that can be packaged in a solution. And then basically, in regards of building these applications, it really consists on these 3 key focus areas that we have there at the end, which is basically First of all, you need to model what is going to be your data model. You're modeling the business data that you're going to have. Then once you have that done, once you have all of your entities, your attributes, then you need to define what are going to be your business processes. You need to define those forms. You can use and leverage stuff like business process flows. You can look into other stuff like Alok was mentioning before, business rules, in order to create part of those business processes. And once you have all of that clear, you just need to compose the app where you would choose which is the sitemap you want, which are the dashboards, views, entities that you want to put into that. And again, everything is pretty much built for you. The layout is built for you, creating these responsive applications, and pretty much you can be creating simple applications right away, straight out of the box. And obviously then having all the complexity that you can add on top of it by extending it with your additional JavaScripts, plugins, or all of the bits that Alok has mentioned before. Now, why not just model-driven apps? Now, as Alok was saying before, we have these two versions, right? Or these two ways that we can create applications using the model-driven apps or the canvas-driven apps. So why not just model-driven apps? It could look like it's probably the easiest way of creating an application. I don't have to worry about creating a layout. I don't have to worry about pretty much making a responsive applications. Why should I be not considering? Why should I be considering anything else if this pretty much could give me everything that I want? So basically, one of the reasons why you might want to, why model-driven apps might not be the right approach is maybe due to a custom user interface that you might need. In model-driven apps, most of the times when you need to create some sort of custom user interface, most of the times you would pretty much use like web resources to create custom components, or if you are embedding data that is coming from other parts of your business, you would create these web resources that you would be then embedding into your model-driven apps, and normally that kind of defeats a bit the purpose. We have introduced other things such as the Powerapps component framework that you can also use into creating those more custom visualizations, but we'll talk about that in one of the next slides. But basically, because the lack of creating that custom UI and model-driven apps is something that it might not make it the right thing for you, basically. Visualization of external data, and basically when you want to get external data into your model-driven app, some of the times that is not done in a seamless way, right? Basically, there are two ways you can do this. You can bring all the data into Dynamics, which is not normally what you would want to do, depending on whether you have high volumes of data or not. But sometimes you can also create those sort of integrations. You could also do that with like web resources embedded into your forms, or you could be using other things such as virtual entities, right? That we have, but obviously those also introduce their own challenges, such as issues with security that are not matched between or across the systems that easily. That option being only just the read-only way where you can consume the data, but you can actually perform modifications over it within the model-driven application. And then also the additional challenge of not being able to combine that data across different sources with virtual entities. So there are ways of actually visualizing external data. We're not saying that it's not, but it's sometimes not as straightforward as it could be with canvas-driven apps, for example. Then the next two takes task-based capture or specialized UI scenarios. This pretty much goes to the point where we're talking before, that maybe for special processes that you have in your business, specific industries, something that MDA might not be ideal in order to capture all of that data across multiple entities or repeating elements. You want to specialize that data capture for a specific need that your business might have. MDA still has mechanisms where you can leverage to so stuff like business process flows, something like that, to kind of facilitate that. But it might not be the easiest way or the most efficient way for your business in order to grab all of that data and process it in a specific way. We put some special scenarios there, like, for example, seating plans for events or stock control, or if you're in a factory and you have some sort of IoT there and you're visualizing data across all of the sensors that you might have. things like this might make MDA not be the right visualization mechanism that basically to view all of that data. And then customer-facing scenarios. Fair enough. MDA can be in some ways accessed through things such as Azure B2B, but it's not normally the way you would want to use it to put customer-facing data, right? Or in a more branded or specific way, expose that data to your customers. You do have things such as Dynamics 365 portals, for example, that you can use for that. But sometimes other mechanisms such as Canvas-driven apps could be a perfect way of doing that as well. So we're talking about Canvas-driven apps as probably the alternative to tackle all of these challenges of why not to use model-driven apps, as we were saying in the previous slide. Basically, with Canvas-driven apps, you can build these standalone web and mobile applications that basically can work across all of our cloud services. As we were saying before, you could create an application that is consuming data from your OneDrive, that is actually then putting data into Dynamics. It works seamlessly across all of the cloud services, and as well, thanks to our almost 220 or more data source connectors that we have, basically you can consume data from external third-party applications and from ours, like Microsoft connectors, or also from our vendors that are publishing every day new connectors there to consume data. You can bring all of those data sources together in order to create that seamless experience in these standalone applications. In regards to having a more custom UI, right? As we were saying before, model-driven apps, pretty much you decide what you want to put into it, but all the layout is pretty much decided to you. You do have a level of customization that you can do into it, but with Canvas-driven apps, you have this pixel perfect experience, right? Where you can start with a blank canvas, or you can also start with one of our built-in templates, and you can create highly customized user interface and user experiences that can help cover those specialist UI scenarios that we were talking before, for example. Because Powerapps uses an application in order to render all of this application, and in order to render all of these standalone web applications that we were talking about, in your device, for example, that application will pretty much be able to connect your application with all the native mobile capabilities that you have in your devices, such as cameras, global position systems, or notification push, or actually being able to add then custom controls and basically keep making use of all the rich capabilities that your devices have and bring all of that functionality into your application to build a rich application that can leverage all of that. Because the Power Platform sits on Azure, as Alok was mentioning before when we were seeing at that stack slide, basically all the things that you can leverage within Powerapps are all the intelligence features that we have as part of the cognitive services powered by Azure. You have natural language processing, image detection. All of these things are pretty much built into the application, so you can actually use these in order to build your applications. So basically, we have those two paradigms there, which are model-driven apps, canvas-driven apps. Each of them good for their own scenarios. We just wanted to give you a bit of an idea of what we consider normally each of them will be best suited for, and where you could be considering these. We were saying Canvas apps are these standalone web and mobile applications, although they don't necessarily need to be loaded always as standalone applications. These are applications that can also be embedded into your other services. As we were saying before, for example, in Office 365 and SharePoint, you can do the embedding of these Canvas apps to offer a more rich experience for a specific need or business process that you might have in place, or within your model-driven applications, right? Whether you want to be building rich visualizations, you can leverage Canvas-driven apps that can then be kind of infused or embedded into your model-driven applications to create that kind of more rich experience that can be actually consuming data from from third-party services by using our connectors. So Canvas Apps is not the only way that you have today in order to build these rich visualizations, right? Because we understand that these applications that are low-code, no-code applications normally are sometimes not enough at this point. We also offer the Powerapps component framework, which developers today can use in order to create richer visualizations within model-driven apps or canvas-driven apps as well. I believe the Powerapps component framework in Canvas apps is already in preview, where you can start using these reusable components. Basically, these are custom components that can be responsive, reusable, and are solution aware as well. So you can transport these across different environments with your solutions. They support multiple form factors. And actually, you don't need to be learning any sort of new technologies if you're already knowledgeable in standard web technology, or your developers are already knowledgeable on standard web technologies such as TypeScript, JavaScript, CSS, and HTML5. So if you have those skills, you could literally be building custom component frameworks right away out of the box to kind of offer that rich visualization within your model-driven apps. We also support React and UI Fabric, our design framework, which has already pre-built really nice looking components that you can use in order to enrich your forms or your applications. And it's actually a very smart way and quick way of not having to worry about creating all of those, React components that are responsive, that have that nice design. All of that is already pretty much done for you, and you can reuse all of those within your applications. We are putting there the link where you can go in to look into the blog entry where this was announced, and then you can look into all the different communication documentation that we have available. We also are following. There's nice websites that have already galleries of all of these components that are open source and you can use right away. So we really recommend you to go ahead and look into that. So when we were looking at the Power Platform stack, we were looking at Powerapps. The other component that we consider that is important today is Microsoft Flow. Microsoft Flow is basically this intelligent process automation service that we have. That it's not only, its purpose is not only intended for simple task automation, such as when a record is created here, send an email, but it can actually go into really complex business processes and workflows that basically don't need you to develop anything. Basically, you can create all of these directly within the platform itself. You can model all of these business processes and automate all of your workflows that you have in apps and services, right? Today, if you're using the classic workflow engine within the one that we have from Dynamics 365, all of that, most of it can be done within Flow. We actually recommend that if you're already thinking about creating new processes within your applications, to consider using Flow right away. I think there were some questions around licensing, and in the chat we will be answering all of those. But there's free tiers, and their Dynamics 365 licenses already include a part of the execution. But basically, you can start using it right away out of the box, and it's fully integrated. Flows can be as well packaged in your solutions. It's a component that can be part of your solution. So there is an ALM story behind ALM as well. As I was saying before, it's far from just simple automations. It can also be used for more advanced scenarios. You can have branching, loops, and way more stuff. We have all of our connectors out of the box where you can use more than 230 pre-built connectors. And hey, if you don't find the connectors that you need there, the possibility of creating custom connectors is documented, and we have all of that information, and it's pretty straightforward on how to create those. We have a strong enterprise governance and security story that we'll be talking about in a few slides, but it's all there. And then we also offer extensibility, right? When still what is out of the box in Flow is still not enough, you can actually extend that by using Azure or adding custom logic. Actually, Flow is basically built on Azure Logic Apps. So if you already have worked with Logic Apps in the past, this will be really familiar for you as well. So you can create processes that can get triggered from events that pretty much, we have more than 400 triggers out of the box that you can use to start flows. It could be when you, for example, you create a record in Dynamics, when you receive an email, when an external HTTP endpoint is called, anything like that you can use as a trigger for your processes. And basically you can also use others that are exposed through custom connectors. Again, we have all of these 220, 230 plus connectors that you can use in order to create that sort of integration within your flows. You have the modern approvals process as well, where you can get kind of like approval processes in place that flow will pretty much wait till something is approved to keep executing all of that. And all of this can be done with the flow applications that you have. And when we're talking about things like branching, for example, conditional branching, as we were saying before, we have all of these AA capabilities built into the Power Platform that you can actually use in order to create more complex processes that need to be based on all of this artificial intelligence that you might have in place. We consider to have what we call a world-class application lifecycle management. Basically, all of these components that we were talking about before, Powerapps, model-driven apps, canvas-driven apps, flows, and all the other components that we have within the Power Platform, all of these, basically, you have great support to move all of these assets between environments by using solutions. We have all of the source management story behind with one of our latest acquisitions like GitHub or Azure DevOps, all built in that you can use right straight out of the box in order to make more efficient your source management and your ALM. Sorry, you have all of the agile process governance that is already basically all built into Azure DevOps. It facilitates all the team collaboration as well. If you find yourself today creating repeatable processes, you should consider looking into things such as continuous integration, continuous deployment frameworks, basically that you can use in Azure DevOps to kind of automate all of those repetitive processes that you are using probably today in your deployment processes. As Alok was saying before, when we were talking about automating, we have released lately the Powerapps build tools, which pretty much are a set of Azure DevOps build tasks that you can use in order to automate common build deployment tasks. Over are the days where you need to be using configuration migration tools or solution packager or package deployer and all of these tools that we had in the past that were quite powerful at that point, but all of these apps, pretty much all of these Power Build tools pretty much bring all of that into Azure DevOps and allow you to pretty much automate all of these things for you. Enterprise grade governance. We have all of this unified admin center, which pretty much provides you with a comprehensive management across all of these applications, these first-party applications, third-party ones, custom apps that you might have. You have your Azure AD tenant where you can be enabling rich policies across all of your users. You can use things such as multi-factor authentication in order to ensure security in your system. You have all of the identity management side of things, auditing logs. You can also be managing all of your devices, right? You want to manage the security of your devices, deploying different applications to your devices, ensuring security. All of this is something that you can do within the Power Platform as well. We also offer admin and reporting analytics that you can consume in order to understand how your system is performing. For example, Alok was talking about capacity and throttling. You can also use this in order to ensure that you're within the limits or that you're not going to be hitting any limits in case you're deploying new customizations or you're introducing new loads into your platform. You can pretty much track the health of your overall implementation across all the different applications that you might have in the platform. And then to end with this dive into the Power Platform, we were talking about the modernization of your approach, where we were saying you should be looking to best practices for that, because we understand that still with all of these low code, no code approaches, you're still going to be writing some sort of code, your plugins, or all of the code that you might have in your solutions is something that can be checked with our solution checker. Basically, this is a tooling that provides rich static analysis of your solutions out of the box. And basically what this can do is flag for you specific performance, design, stability issues that you might have in your solution. Pretty much, there is no good excuse for being in an unsupported scenario nowadays, right? All of these supportability concerns that you might have around your code, you can pretty much detect that with Solution Checker. Nowadays, when you're in your list of solutions, you can actually check if that solution has been checked or not. If you're acquiring solutions from third parties, or someone is developing solutions for you from one of your partners, all of that is in control, and you can pretty much see whether that has been checked or not. And then from a Canvas app perspective, we do have the app checker, which pretty much helps you to identify and resolve errors and improve the performance of your applications. All of it integrated within Solution Checker. If you have one of these within your solutions that you're actually analyzing, it will pretty much detect all of these issues and give it to you. And actually, it's all embedded within the maker experience of Powerapps. So you can pretty much get all of that information right out of the box when you're building your applications. So with that, we're pretty much done. I know I'm almost, well, I'm actually already over the time. We just wanted to introduce this summary slide, in which we want to make a bit of a summary of everything that we've spoken about. Alok, feel free to step in at any point if you want.
Yeah. So I think if you have to take away something from this session today, it's really important that whenever you're trying to design or build a solution, just stop and have a think in terms of, what's really available, what has the Power Platform got to offer me, and the ability to take the no code and low code capabilities much further today. So before you jump into writing a code or developing a next plugin, take a step back and think if that's really required, and try and develop more skills and capability around PCFs and things like Canvas apps, which will allow you to do things in a much more easier fashion, not worrying about a lot of underlying authentication kind of requirements, or wherever possible leveraging connectors rather than having to worry about consuming APIs within plugins and things like that. So I think that's, to summarize, I think that's really most fundamental, I would say. Be aware of these technologies and be aware of them rather than getting into the old thinking of, let me quickly put a plugin together or let me write some JavaScript code for doing this. I think that's the key bit, because in the long run, this is beneficial for business, easier to maintain, easier to change, and easier to evolve as we go on adding new capabilities.